Go.compare sponsors the Telegraph Rugby Podcast. At Go.compare, we are pleased to be partnering with the Telegraph Media Group to launch the Making a Difference campaign, recognising the individuals who are going the extra mile at grassroots rugby clubs across Great Britain. Go to telegraph.co.uk/making a difference to nominate a grassroots hero who could win £5,000 for their club, as well as hints and tips from our insurance experts at Go.compare.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Telegraph Rugby Podcast. What a busy week it's been. Huge news off the field. Great games on the field as well over the Friday, Saturday and Sunday. We're going to do our best to try and dissect all of it for you over the next hour or so. I'm Ben Coles. I'm back in the studio and I'm joined by Charlie Morgan. Hi, Charlie.
You're back, Colesy.
I am. And hi, Charles. You're here as well. Charles Richardson.
Yes, I am. Hello, everybody.
Nice to be back and not just a floating head on the TV in the corner. So that's
that was nice. Bit of variation.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure. Charles, where have you been over the weekend?
I was in Paris for France, New Zealand. What a spectacle. Great game. I didn't think France were necessarily much to write home about, but they won and they beat one of the world's form sides at the minute and got there by hook or by crook. And I think a lot of teams could take a leaf out of their book at the minute.
I was going to say it's better than some of their Six Nations rivals have done in recent weeks. Charlie, you were at Big Twickenham and Small Twickenham, right?
Twickenham double for me. Yeah, the big one on Saturday, and then across the A316 at the Stoop for Sunday for England A versus Australia A, which was a nice tonic actually to the sort of little bit gloomy the Saturday affair.
Absolute minimal commuting expenses as well, just by foot. I'm guessing.
By foot, yeah, twice.
Very good.
Good for the environment.
I didn't go to Paris by foot.
That's a shame. That would be something that I would like to read about. Actually, something to consider maybe moving forward. Very good. I was at Twickenham with you, Charlie, on Saturday, and then in Cardiff yesterday for quite a grim day for Wales.
You are sneering. For people just listening that aren't on YouTube, you're sneering at Cardiff. How tough it was.
It's just quite.
It's a face.
It's just quite sad. I mean, we'll get into it. It just felt really. That stadium's lovely, isn't it? It's so noisy and raucous, and it just felt so somber. It was bad.
I always feel really spoiled at Cardiff because I always moan about the press seats being quite low and how actually.
Do you not like that? I like that.
Okay.
I
feel like I can't see anything.
Only because in the opening minutes, Jack Morgan tried to make a tackle on Will Skelton, and you sort of forget how big Will Skelton is on TV. And it was like looking at a dad trying to run into some kids. And Jack Morgan's one of the best tacklers in Europe.
Big as well.
The whole match and the scoreline had a bit of a dads v lads vibe. In all honesty, didn't it?
Yeah, it was terrible. That isn't my standout moment for the weekend. But can I ask for yours first, Charlie? You go.
Or
Charles, if you're not ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'll go the spotlit hacker, I think, before France New Zealand, which was just a thing of beauty. I mean, I've written before about how I don't necessarily think we should have the hacker in rugby union, but if they're going to do it like that, then I'm all for it.
That's interesting. So you need like a massive spectacle every week.
If it's like that and it gets the hair standing on end, then I'm all for it.
So they've won you over with the hacker in the space of a few weeks?
Yeah, maybe New Zealand should play all the matches at night time, maybe, and get the floodlights on them.
Sure. Okay. Charlie?
I'm not really ready for this, I think. But the opening for
France, we record at the same time every week, mate.
Yeah, France. The opening of Argentina Ireland was mad, wasn't it? And it was when they came back. They eventually came back to give Moroni a yellow for whacking Jack Crowley high. But that opening passage lasting 2 minutes, then eventually like millions of knock-ons, a couple of interceptions, a few fly hacks down the field, and then eventually Argentina scored, and then we came back, but that was sort of delirious. The other one I had was actually England's start, the kick to kick, because the kick to kick and then over the top line out, drop goal attempt down the blind side, because for the purely selfish reason that a lot of that stuff featured in the preview that I'd done. So I was sort of punching the air.
A massive self-pat on the back.
So let's keep
your highlight of the weekend.
Argentina.
Something I wrote came true, and that's my standout moment of the weekend by Charlie Morgan.
And then it unravelled from there.
Wow. Okay. Can I have two? Selfishly, one on-field, one off. The on-field one.
A lot of selfishess in these standout moments.
I can't remember the last time I actually physically laughed at a try being scored, but it was probably Len Ickitow's yesterday at the end of Wales Australia, where he sort of. They were passing on the backs, and he went to pass outside and just realised that there was no one there. Paused, threw like a little dummy anyway, and then still had the pace to just scamper around and score. I was like, wow.
So dummy to no one.
It was, no, but a proper looked to pass and realised there was no one there and went, oh, okay, and had to reassess. I just found that really funny. And Ben, and then also Ben Muncaster, making his Scotland debut, was chatting to BBC Sport afterwards, and he was asked how emotional it was, obviously, and he said something along the lines of, I was absolutely done during the Portuguese anthem. I don't even know what they were saying. I don't even speak Portuguese, and that just really tickled me. I just thought that was really good, and just sort of summed up how much it means to be a Test rugby player.
So just to recap quickly, I know. We need to move on. So our stand-up moments from the weekend are a dummy to nobody, me getting in a little dig about the hacker, and Charlie something that he wrote coming true.
Hey, and an emotional Scottish player on debut.
And an emotional Scottish player on debut. Anything to do with the rugby?
Charles, you've teed us up perfectly for our next section. Right, England against South Africa at Twickenham. Let's do it. Okay, so. Charlie!
A big sigh.
I couldn't tell if Charlie was sighing or laughing there about England.
I'm sighing because you're coming to me, because off air we've said you're the one that's going to be. I'm the one that's going to be positive about it.
Because the reason for this was I was still chewing through the two press conferences afterwards doing the news. And I think you'd gone to start doing your analysis, and you texted saying something along the lines of, "I actually feel a bit better about England after that," and my head sort of screamed, why? So I'm going to ask you now, 48 hours later, do you still feel positive about England? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think they had a tactical plan that they invested in that got them to the final quarter and gave them 5 line-outs in the Springboks 22 in the final quarter, which would have been more than enough to win the game. And it's really difficult because you're saying there, Charles, we had this conversation off air where you're saying, are you more hopeful because of that, or are you more worried because is it more worrying that they are gaffing these situations? And if you really look at them in more detail, there are 5 lineouts. They go to Chandler-Cunningham South each time because South Africa give them the front. They mark up the back, mark up Itoje, as New Zealand did actually in the first weekend of the Autumn Nations series. So they have to go to Chandler-Cunningham South, which means either that they have to get pay with their maul, or they need a massive runner in midfield, and they don't have a massive runner in midfield. They do get paid for them all once. That leads to a penalty advantage. Then they go to the corner again. We were wondering whether they could have kicked for goal, and Jamie George was off, and Maro Itoje back them all. And they are unlucky, I think, to be done with that fake throw. I do think they're unlucky. And if you watch, they go short. Cunningham South comes around Donbrand, I think it is, and takes it, and they set up a sort of short drive, and they look like they're going to be over for that point. And then that's going to...
I think they do get over, don't they?
Yeah, and then Brace calls them back.
What, do you think they're unlucky in that it was spotted, or do you think that the call's harsh?
So probably a slightly harsh call, and then very unlucky it was spotted, because if you think back to the Ireland, I think I'm right in saying that the attack that launched the drop goal, Theo Dan does exactly the same. And it's just one of those things, it's like when the jumpers come out and edge miles round, it's sort of like, let's not blow up for that, because it's just slowing down the game and it's sort of a technical offence. And yeah, and I just think that a lot of what they did was good, and it's the lapses that are derailing everything. And the kind of, I had a chat to my mum about it, and she said she was watching it just going, the sort of, if you're English, the sort of heartbreaking thing about this is that it seems like they're having to huff and puff to score points, and the other side don't really seem to have to huff and puff. And I was like, that's a pretty good way of
better analysis than we've come up with.
Exactly.
Autumn.
Yeah.
So that's actually
it was almost sort of individual lapses, wasn't it? That allowed South Africa back in. You look at the Ben Curry, he wasn't even playing. The Ben Earl missed tackle on Damien Gatland with Slade as well involved, and that sort of. I mean, you must be looking at it as Steve Borthwick and Richard Wigglesworth and the other coaches, and just thinking how do you mitigate for your number 8? I mean, okay, he's a flanker nominally, but your number 8, who everyone's saying is outstanding and world class, missing a one-on-one tackle against their inside centre, basically being physically dominated by their inside centre. How do you they must be sitting there going, we can do as much planning and strategic work during the week. You've just got to be making that tackle.
I think what will really annoy England is that for a second week in a row, South Africa actually weren't kind of anywhere near their best consistently over 80 minutes. It felt like the Scotland game a lot afterwards, where England had sort of given South Africa a really good go for good patches, and South Africa had made a lot of errors. Like they struggled early on with a few aspects of the kicking game, didn't they? And they were moved around defensively, and yet England haven't been able to take advantage of that, like Scotland, which is a credit to South Africa's strength in depth and how much talent they have at the moment. But yeah, I just feel like the fact that South Africa again aren't playing at their best and are producing these wins says a lot about where they are compared to where England are at the moment.
I have a bit of a problem with that. I think England deserve credit, and Scotland deserved more credit last week for. I was really impressed by Scotland pack, largely apart from scrummaging, and the same has to be said for England in that they made life awkward. They pressurised certain areas quite well. They clearly had a kicking strategy that worked a fair bit. So should we go through the tries? The double charge down. Again, this is. England have been more het up about these escorting rule changes and this box kick blocker than anybody else, and that's because they've relied on it. And a really good example is that Pieter-Steph try, because England box kicked the hell out of it in that World Cup semi-final, and they were allowed to. Ben O'Keefe let them have the blocker. Ben O'Keefe let them have 15 seconds at the tail of every ruck, and that was clearly a strategy to take time out of the game, but also to make sure in a really precise way that they were able to pressurise Cheslin Colby and Kurtley Arenza. And when they tried to do that again, Rassie Erasmus it surprised me that it was the first time that Etzebeth and RG Snyman had started together, I think.
Mad,
but every ruck, it was RG Snyman guarding on the right and Etzebeth on the left, so he was on Jack Van Poortvliet's right foot, and it just looked cagey, didn't it? Without that blocker, maybe with Andrew Brace hurrying them up a little bit more, and the rucks not being as shallow. Now, having said that, there was a double charge down that led to the try, and then another charge down that actually it was one of England's brightest, sort of most assured moments of ball movement across the back line, because they went across their 22, and then it's Slightholme who kicks it into the dead ball area, and they should have been doing more of that. I don't really understand why they don't use Slade's left foot more and kick from wider out anyway. But after that, Jack Van Poortvliet 1-2 turnovers for kicking. Fassi fumbled into touch, and then it was Underhill, I think, on the chase. Got a jackal, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that was part of the strategy that helped them into the game. But I do think it's undoubtedly true that they have had the toughest time being adaptable with these new laws, and actually, I don't really feel much sympathy for them.
It was getting to the point where we were sort of tense before every box kick, didn't we? Because you could see Etzebeth lurking and sort of ready to get out the blocks.
And also, it was JVP's first start of the autumn, so he's been sort of thrown in with his first, well, not even his first start, his first appearance. First game of rugby he's played since Leicester's last game before the autumn.
Yeah, that was certainly a big career before kick-off. In terms of the position England got into, though, was so promising, wasn't it? So 2019 up after that Cheslin Colby obstruction penalty, and they're in a fairly good position. What do we think about England's bench at the moment and what they're getting from their replacements? Are they getting the impact they need in the forwards in particular, do we think, to close out these test matches?
I think you can dress it up any way you like. I think if you look at England's bench and compare it to New Zealand, South Africa's, Ireland's, France's, it's not in the same league, I think. Is that because they don't have the depth currently? Perhaps. They certainly, up front, when they have one or two injuries in the starting 15, that has a massive knock-on effect on the bench, because really you'd be having Chandler Cunningham-South coming off the bench with 20 minutes to go, with Ollie Chesham having started. Now, I know, again, it's a little bit excuses because we have plenty of players in the Premiership, but it's still reality that, but all of the nations are missing players. That's the key here, isn't it? All of the nations are missing players, but they still seem to have a better talent pool, certainly up front, to come off the bench and close out these games than we do. I mean, you're looking at that. You've got Finn Baxter, who has fabulous potential. In an ideal, would he be coming off the bench if he was South African at this age? Probably not. Luke Cowan-Dickie, who we thought might have ended his career, really is now England's second choice hooker. Dan Cole, who surely doesn't have that long left. Ezekwe, has he ever really impressed at international level? I don't think so. Same could be said as Don Brandt, no matter how well they play for their clubs. And so you're looking at that and you're going, there is a real step down from England's starting pack to those coming off the bench. I don't think necessarily it applies to the back division. I think we've got much better depth there in England and in the Premiership, but I think certainly up front that is an area of concern. And also it's borne out by the facts that they keep on letting games slip in the last 20 minutes and haven't been able to execute 5 lineouts in the opposition 22 in the last quarter. And I know you're very positive about it, Charlie, but I sort of think that last quarter was really damning. The whole thing was really damning. It was so inaccurate. Like I've spoken already about, there was a pass from first phase off a line out, Ben Earl to Harry Randall. The first pass from Ben Earl he's playing scrum half in inverted commas, to Randall, who's pushed out to first receiver. Randall's taking it over his head, retreating, then ships it back to Smith, and England have lost 20 metres before anyone's even taken contact. And that felt like a bit of a microcosm of the last 20 minutes for me, really.
Charlie's making me feel more positive about England, actually. So what you're saying is working, because I came away from Twickenham with just a bit of a sense of apathy, really, in terms of they just feel like a tier below the best sides in the world at the moment, and maybe they actually have been for longer than we really realise, and now it's just sinking in with the results. What do you think about? Well, what do you think about the not getting forward on, for starters, and Roebuck having that kind of mini HIA cameo for Slade and their decisions there?
I was next to you, Colsey, and I thought that was sort of a proactive tactical move, and I was really excited about it, but because I didn't realise that Slade had gone off for HIA. I thought they were going, right, we're all in on this aerial stuff. Freeman's going to 13, Roebuck's on, and it got them 3 points straight away, didn't it?
Worked.
The 10 situation is so interesting, isn't it?
It
because
is, yeah.
Does that? I know I can't remember who. I'm really apologise for that. Somebody asked whether the 10, 12, 13, 10, 13, 12, however they want to number it, whether that's actually clicked. And I think when they've looked at their it's with George Ford at 10 that they have looked more consistently dangerous and cohesive in phase play. And it did feel like the plan which did get them close, as I've said, was kicking everything, being reliant on those crumbs, and then they certainly had a few plans to get Marcus Smith in the pocket. I wonder whether that was, they were pointing out Etzebeth in the defensive line, because they knew that he comes flying out and he's on his own, and that was what they took advantage of the first time. And then they were also pointing out Pollard in the backfield, so they had those plans certainly, but without Furbank there, I still feel that the centre partnership is a bit of a fudge, because it's two 13s.
It does feel more and more like 2 13s. Yeah, I was going to say that.
That didn't help them. So once to just go back to the line-out issue, once they've gone to the front of the line-out issue and it's a static maul, they're trying to run that play that everybody plays with Slade at first receiver and Lawrence coming short and a 10 out the back, and they're just getting nowhere. They're just getting enveloped. It would have been so difficult to take off Marcus Smith at Twickenham, given the sort of narrative of how this whole week's gone. And then maybe that is what you're talking about.
I'm just imagining the booze.
Imagine. Well, again, the camera went to the bench to see Harry Randall, and it was almost like people were baying to see if George Ford was coming on, and they were going to be angry at that. This is how these narratives build over the course of a campaign. It's a width of a post, and they overturn New Zealand, and then they're more buoyant going into Australia, but it's just piling on. And one thing that is gathering impetus is how Marcus Smith is the first choice fly half, but
do they gel well enough?
Does that backline gel?
Is he a 15? Is he going to end up internationally at 15?
Is he going to end up internationally as in a Damien McKenzie sort of role for a few years?
In the 22 or 24.
Sure. I feel a bit. In that piece, I've written that he's a surefire starter, which is something I kind of regret a little bit. I think he's surefire. He has that place in the 23 for sure. And this is going to sound stupid, because he directed the start of that really kind of assured passage for England at the beginning, with a kick past to Slightholme, and obviously setting up Slightholme's try. He had a really good cross kick for Freeman. But just as a consistent force in phase play, England don't look balanced, and that has to look at the 10, 12, 13 and 15 as well. That balance really needs looking at.
He has a superb highlights reel, Michael Smith, doesn't he? But England are losing matches with him at fly off, and there's a balance there. I'm not necessarily sure what the answer is, but it's just the facts of the matter is England have lost 5 on the bounce, or however many it is, with Smith at 10. But yet he has all these fabulous little moments of brilliance where you're sort of like, yeah, okay, you can definitely play, but are you able to gel 14 players around you into an attacking structure and system at test level? I think the jury is still out on that, frankly, for all the value he brings and for all his individual brilliance. I think the jury is still out on that.
He's not gaffing lineouts. He's not missing clear outs at rucks.
Yeah.
So there's that to be said as well. I think he helped bring England to the cusp of beating South Africa.
Definitely.
Just before we wrap up this section, quick verdicts on some individual performances. Sam Underhill to start with.
Excellent. Yeah, really, really good. Almost looks a little, as you said last week, Charlie, looks a little bit silly not having him in from the start now. He was really good, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he wasn't out through injury. It was a selection decision 2 weeks in a row. Chesney Colby, Charlie.
Yeah, awesome.
Just lethal, isn't he? And in terms of that, the second try down the touchline.
Poor Ollie Slightholme.
You sort of know when certain players get the ball in space, don't you? You're like, okay, this is going one way.
And what 15 obviously really interesting as well. Freddie Stewart, I've seen a little bit of criticism come his way. I wasn't there. Obviously watched it on TV. I thought he looked really good. I mean, I know he looked a little bit silly for that first try with Grant Williams, but at the end of the day, it was a frontline missed tackle, and I think when you're a fullback in that position, there's very little you can do. And also, we know with how big he is that pace over 10 metres is not necessarily his forte. He has other sort of super strengths. I thought he played really well, and I think he is now back in the conversation, especially with these law changes.
Can't criticise him for the Colby first one either. I was player camming him actually, and England got so narrow because they'd been beaten up front.
So much room, Colby, wasn't it?
Stewart has put his head down and sprinted across in Colby's direction, and Colby is beating 99.9% of Test players on the planet in that much space.
Completely agreed.
Stewart just sliding off the pitch as he got done as well was really good. I think I was trying to think of other individual performances to mention. No, I think Stewart. I think anyone is getting sidestepped by Grant Williams in that position. Also, just nice to see a really filthy sidestep in a big Test game at Twickenham.
It was like a gasp, wasn't it?
Yeah. We haven't had one as good as that for a little while.
And just quickly, verdict on the 2 ruled out tries. Fair, as in one for each, or harsh? Both.
I thought Fassi's one was. I thought that was fine.
I mean, I think genuinely that is absolutely a forward pass that is cleared 9 times out of 10. Though I think that's the problem that rugby's in at the minute. I think it's definitely forward, but I think that's not being called 99 times out of 100.
I think Brace. I don't think I'm slandering Brace here, but I thought he initially said it was fine, having seen it, and then is sort of.
I think Timo Ben Whitehouse said it did clearly come out the hands forward. I think there is an angle that might show that, but. And then the neck roll from Maritoji looked. He doesn't have him around the neck originally. Sort of slips up. Again, looked a little bit marginal. It's the age old thing. Do we want to be ruling out tries for this for either team? I mean, there was one on. There was a marginal neck roll called on Saturday night at the Stade de France. Do we want to be ruling out? I know it's foul play, but do we want to be ruling out tries for these marginal offences?
That sounds like a good post-autumn debate, which we can get into in our last pod. That was Twickenham. Let's have a look at some of the other games.
Go.compare sponsors the Telegraph Rugby Podcast. As a proud sponsor of the WRU, we believe in the importance of grassroots rugby. That begins with the people who are going the extra mile for their local clubs, on and off the pitch. That's why we're partnering with the Telegraph Media Group to launch the Making a Difference campaign. From volunteers to groundsmen, referees to coaches, we want to celebrate the people who are really making a difference and reward them with £5,000 for their club to improve the grassroots game. If you know someone who deserves to be rewarded, we want to hear from you. Go to telegraph.co.uk/making a difference to find out more.
Next game up for us Sunday in Cardiff. Wales 20, Australia 52. 52, the most points Australia have ever scored away from home against Wales, beating the 2022 tally of 39 points. So it's just gradually increasing every 2 years, which is slightly concerning.
There's some wild results this year. Argentina slapping up
Yes,
Australia.
if you put those
to the
two
tune
next
of-
to each other, it doesn't really make much sense. And that's the game. So who wants to ask me about Cardiff? Go on.
Was
Yeah.
it like a fun vacuum? What was it like? Was it sort of angsty and angry?
I'd say the fun disappeared rapidly because Australia were 19-0 up after about 20 minutes.
Yeah, and was there anger? Because the sort of
No.
yeah, from being
No
it's
anger.
almost as if like we're not very good and we know we are sort of vibe, and this just is going to happen now.
Absolutely no anger at all. There was a very good-natured group of Wallaby fans behind the press box who cracked out that "Is this a library?" chant maybe midway through the second half,
And the Welsh fans joined in.
And the Welsh fans probably thought about joining in. No, it was just sad. It's just sad. This Welsh team, if I try and think about positives off the top of my head, they just were not able to. I had a really weird defensive system where they were just fanning out and not committing any people to the breakdown, and then they would still get picked off 1-on-1 to leak tries, or line breaks, which was incredibly frustrating. That was the deal with Tom Wright's opener. Quick fact about Nick Frost, who scored a breakaway try for their second after getting a turnover off James Botham. Ian Payton of the Sydney Morning Herald, who I was chatting, he's the only Aussie journalist on tour at the moment, so please give him a follow on social media. And he told me that Frost used to be a sprinter as a teenager back in Australia and was something ridiculous like Australia's like under 15 pentathlete champion or some rubbish. Now he's just a very fast second row, and so that was pretty damning.
He really did accelerate away.
He was fast, wasn't he?
He had good techers as well.
He was really quick.
Hip to lip.
I'd like to see him in a sprint race with RG Slayman because he can shift as well. And I think the most damning part of that early bit was that Wales' maul defence actually isn't the worst part of their game. And I appreciate that's damning with faint praise, but conceded 3 maul tries to Matt Faisler, the Wallabies hooker. Really bad. They lost Adam Beard 7 minutes in to a knee injury in what was basically friendly fire because another player fell into him while they were trying to make a tackle. That obviously hinders your line out. So at 19-0 down, you're thinking, what's happening here? And then Tom Wright, who was brilliant, was named player of the match, drops a restart. And Wales get this weird swing of momentum where Archie Griffin's winning scrum penalties against Angus Bell. That's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scoring through Aaron Wainwright, 2 penalties, and it's 13-19 at half-time, and you're like, okay.
There's a game on here.
Maybe this isn't desperate. And the crowd would obviously getting back into it. Then Sammy Karevi gets red carded. I mean, why we're not getting straight red cards on the field for head-on-head shots on players like Jack Morgan, I don't know. And instead of Wales taking advantage during the 20-minute red card, they concede 21 points. And from there, it was just a train wreck. So
Are we?
it's hard. It's 11 straight defeats. That's a record for Wales. Most ever.
I might be clutching at straws here, and I'm not really sure how much of a difference it would have made. But just the selection seemed a little bit odd. You've got Australia, who are playing a really fast, high-tempo game, sticking to their strengths. You know, they've got a really quick back three. They're not a Tupou and Skelton aside. I think they're average. They're not a big team, and they played really. Sort of, they moved the ball really well as they did against England. I mean, I can't see why you would leave Reffel out of the back row to that end. You need somebody there. As you said, they weren't competing at the breakdown. Surely, in that scenario, you have to have somebody there who's going to attack the ball and you know try and win the ball back, or at least slow them down to make defending easier. You know, so I appreciate Wainwright and Morgan both have to play because they're both, to be fair, they're both excellent and they're both outstanding. But surely one of them has to switch to 6. And allow Reffel to roam at 7, because if you're not competing at the breakdown and Australia want to play really quickly, then you're just allowing them to play even quicker, and defending them becomes even harder.
Yeah, and this won't shock you, but the best period for Wales was when they suddenly had quick ruck ball in the first half and they were able to actually shift Australia around. For the rest of the game, it was just turgid. Like they could barely get the ball out of there, and actually that led to Wright's interception try for his second, where the ball was so slow when it got to Sam Costello that I think anyone could have seen that his pass was then going to be intercepted. It was just quite sad. Their line-out completely fell apart, a bit like England's in the end of the South Africa game. They just wasted attacking opportunities. I think they lost 5 attacking line-outs, Wales, and obviously Beard going off is going to hinder you there. I'm trying to think of what the worst bit about Wales' performance was.
We've not got to it.
So many contenders.
Or what concerns me the most. And I think it's probably the hat-trick of maul tries, only because who's coming to town on Saturday? Oh, it's South Africa, and they're quite fond of them all.
Yeah,
and even if Rassie, this sounds mean. If I'm Rassie, I'm potentially getting on the phone back to South Africa and just seeing if there's anyone in the URC that we haven't capped yet and probably need to look at. And
Janzi van Rensburg.
Oh yeah, sure,
Bristol
get him in from Bristol, and just maybe thinking about giving them a go, because Wales are going to stick with a similar side because they have to, because they need to blood these young guys, because otherwise they're not going to be anywhere in 4 years.
Well, they also don't have anybody better, I don't think.
Yes, exactly. And can I just a Welsh positive? I thought Tom Rogers on the wing was really good in the air. Made a great try-saving tackle on Karevi. His performance was almost like a rare kind of shining light amongst the rest of it.
Surely the most concerning thing here is that it was like that on Saturday, and there's no sign of it getting any better anytime soon, and no sign necessarily that anyone else will be able to make it better anytime soon. I mean, I know Gatland, with what he said afterwards about how he said, look, if they think the best thing for Welsh rugby is me not being there, then I will go. But
yeah,
I mean, and I know he's on, reportedly on quite a decent wedge, so maybe they could at least. I mean, I don't know how it would work contractually, but is there anybody better who is going to want that job with the state that the WRU is in, the state that Welsh rugby's in, and think they can turn it around? No, there's no wizard.
There is no wizard.
Leon McDonald.
But why would he?
I don't know. If he gets half the wage that Gatland's on, might be attractive. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I mean, the wage is attractive. Maybe we should do it. I don't know. Maybe we should all pitch in.
Can't be any worse.
In terms of what he said afterwards, because obviously he said, yeah, if they decide I'm not the right person, then make that decision. But he expanded on what he wanted to see, and I feel like he said this in his first train a lot. When I was covering him with Wales, he's so insistent that they just don't get enough access to the players for conditioning, because when they do get that access for World Cups, when they get that 3-month period, then they get them to the fitness levels that he wants / likes, and then they're able to carry out his game plan. He was basically saying, we're not getting enough training time at the moment with them, and so therefore we're not able to get them fit enough to do what I want to do.
Sounds a bit like what's going on with England.
Which is a great argument to make, because it's very hard for people to disagree with him,
because you can always be fitter.
Because you can always be fitter, and the evidence from the World Cup was, they look a completely night. I know they've lost a gazillion caps, but they're night and day. Wales beat Australia 46 in September last year.
True, but they did get knocked out in the quarterfinals.
Feels like it's from another universe, that result, in terms of the way the two fortunes have flipped. Sorry,
I don't know.
I have 2 questions.
Australia was so bad.
Are we giving this current Australia side, coached by Joe Schmidt, clearly given a lot of thought to how he brings the most out of the athletes that he's got? They seem to have well-drilled forwards under Jeff Parling and Laurie Fisher. Are we not giving them enough credit? And is the point that they're battle-hardened from the Rugby Championship, these sides, are we not factoring that in enough?
So we can certainly factor that second point in, but that is the same every year.
2 points there. I think what we are seeing is maybe that the quality of the Rugby Championship as a whole is maybe slightly better than people realise in terms of the results. We've had France beating New Zealand, Ireland beating Argentina, and that's been it. Otherwise, it's we've seen a bit of dominance there. And your first point about Schmidt was, I think if they beat Scotland this weekend,
and you have to say they're probably favourites,
and I think they are favourites. I think if they beat Scotland this weekend and they go 3 out of 4. You're going to be there, Charles?
I'm at Murrayfield on Sunday. Very much looking forward to it.
Then I think it's like, oh, wow, okay, they have really turned a corner. Just because Wales are Wales and England have got issues.
And then they're going to have a Grand Slam decider against Ireland in Dublin.
So they might actually, against all the odds and having been slightly written off by some people before the autumn, they might now, go and do... The Grand Slam is kind of on. I mean, I'm not sure they'll beat Ireland, but they've got a chance, and they do look improved. There's so many players to like in that side. I really like Icky Tau. I think Rob Valentini is just wicked at number 8. He's such a good player. I asked Schmidt about the maul. I was like, the maul looked really good today. Like, what was that about? And he was like, well, helps when you have Skelton in the middle of it, and that's true because he's a massive man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think lots to like about Australia. Charles, cutting to Paris, you've talked to us about the wonderful haka.
Yeah,
we were catching glimpses of this at Twickenham. It looked like an absolute belter. Was it as good as it appears? 30-29 to France.
It was a very good game. I wasn't quite as enthralled by it as the scoreline might suggest, for the simple reason that New Zealand had a 7-point lead at half-time, and they were so much better than France in the first half that they should have been way, way, way further ahead at half-time. And then in the second half, France hit back with a quick double try, one from a maul and the second from a pouncing on a New Zealand error, an offload from Tupuvai, and we obviously saw how quick BRBRA was. And then from then on, New Zealand were always playing catch-up, and I never at any point felt as if New Zealand were going to win. From as soon as France took the lead, I appreciate the 1-point score makes it look like it was very tight, but that was from a late New Zealand penalty where France had been leading by 4, and then New Zealand had to attack from their own line, basically their own 5-metre line, and got held up, and then that was that. It was actually a bit of an underwhelming finish. It was Will Jordan got held up by Thibaut Flamand and Georges-Henri Colombe at the end as a maul, and Nika Mashakeli gave it as a maul turnover on New Zealand's own line, and it was like, oh right, well that's that then. But it was a fabulous spectacle. The atmosphere, of course, was amazing as it always is in Paris. The pre-game was fantastic. The haka was fantastic. France were not fantastic and yet have still beaten the All Blacks. So if they've got growth, they've clearly got a lot of growth in them. And yeah, maybe they might be contenders for Six Nations.
Praise for props to Marty Ellison.
Oh, Tamati Williams was phenomenal.
Marty Ellison, that's taking me back to like Super Rugby.
Tamati Williams was sensational for New Zealand in the first half. It just demolished France's scrum, and France have got big boys of their own. You know, Emmanuel Meafu was one of their standouts. And New Zealand cleaned up at the line out in the first half as well. They had France on the ropes. They were dominant at the set piece, and yet 2 quick-fire tries after half-time from France, and the game was basically over.
And that Charles Olivon turnover.
Charles Olivon turnover was sensational. He might, come back. He came off the bench, was dropped completely for the Japan game. He might end up coming back into the starting 15 because Alexandre Roumain, the Toulouse back rower, fabulous for Toulouse, looked a little bit out of sorts on Saturday, I thought. Leaked a lot of pens, wasn't really that effective ball in hand. I can see them bringing Olivon back, and of course they are missing Francois Cross, who, if he's fit, will come back as well.
What's the story with Jalibert?
The story with Jalibert is that they were shaping up to start Ramos at 10, and Jalibert was going to be left out altogether. And then when he's thrown a strop, basically, Jalibert has thrown a strop.
What's the French word for strop?
I absolutely no idea.
Oh, come on, Charles.
I don't know how you would translate strop, but he's not very happy. Look it up. And he's basically said to he was going to be a travelling reserve, i.e. outside the match day 23, but if somebody got injured, he'd be in. And he said he didn't want to do that. And he's gone back to Bordeaux in a strop, which you're going to tell me the French for in a second.
Well, I want to make sure I get it right. So keep talking.
Okay. And then he has not been recalled for the Argentina game. So that relationship seems to have completely broken down. He has never fully grabbed the bull by the haunches in a French jersey, but obviously he has looked exquisite for Bordeaux on so many occasions. But clearly, he is now seen as the third choice fly half for France because Romain Ntamack will be the first choice. He's injured at the minute, and they've decided to basically turn Ramos into a makeshift 10 rather than start Jalibert, which is a bit of a damning indictment, to be fair. You can understand why he might be unhappy, but the way to get your place back is not necessarily to act as he has.
Crissé?
Yeah, fine.
I think is right. Also, tell us about snails. What happened with you and snails?
Oh yeah, very interesting. I was taking a work call on Friday lunchtime about something that we're about to talk about in a second. The big off-field news of last week, and I was with a friend and contact in Paris. We were in a restaurant, and during the work call, I had a plate of snails thrown all over me by a passing waiter. So I had to say, down the phone, you're not going to quite believe this, but can we just pause just for 2 seconds? Because I'm in Paris for the France-New Zealand game tomorrow, and a waiter has just thrown a plate of garlic escargot all over me.
Given your love of France, I imagine you were fine.
Oh, I was fine with. I was fine in theory. Just get me a quick napkin and off we go. I think I ate one actually, but but I was fine in theory. But it was more that the person on the other end of the phone was like, "I've just heard a big crash and a bang. Is all okay?" Yeah, all's fine. I've just had a plate of snails thrown over me. Welcome to France.
Don't worry, the most French thing has happened to me. And finally, in our little roundup, Ireland-Argentina on Friday night, which feels about 5 weeks ago, given how much has happened. Charlie, Ireland had a really good start, and Jack Crowley looked very accomplished, and they were getting fantastic ruck speed, and Gibson Park was directing traffic, and all looked pretty positive. And then it really fell by the wayside in the second half, didn't it?
It's really, Ireland have looked. They've obviously got over the line there against Argentina, but they've looked clunky in comparison to the Rugby Championship sides that they played against, and their sort of really intricate phase play was soaked up reasonably easily for fairly long periods by Argentina. I'm fascinated to see how Argentina go against France this weekend, because I think we spoke about it last week. They sort of seem less susceptible to the brain farts under Felipe Contepomi, and they seem a little bit more consistent while also having this individual brilliance across their back line and their back row. And
absolutely destroyed Italy, who also seemed to be on the up.
Yeah, that was a remarkable result.
Struggling against Georgia.
So yeah, that's a really interesting fixture. Ireland may be just shaking off Russ. Maybe slightly concerned with a sort of aging profile of their squad, but they're going to have to refresh that at some point, and I think Andy Farrell is trying to do that by blooding a few youngsters too. So they're all in a sort of, every November we get a chance to sort of pit the Northern Hemisphere against the Southern Hemisphere in the Rugby Championship sides against the Six Nations sides, and it's just been a really, really fascinating sort of comparison.
Yeah, they had Thomas Clarkson and Sam Prendergast making debuts off the bench, didn't they? Which sort of, there's so much excitement around Prendergast, and this might sound like a ridiculous comment. He just looks quite skinny. Like he came off the bench, and he looks like quite a thin guy for Test rugby. Maybe there's more weight to be added on there. I don't know whether that's just his body type. I'm not sure. The penalty count, I just checked, it was 13-6 Ireland to Argentina, and then the second half that rocketed up. Want to just credit Argentina for how good their counter-rucking was in the second half, and how well they kind of scrapped for turnovers. I mean, you're going to get that with Pablo Matera and Juan Martín Gonzalez, who we're massive fans of. And a quick word as well on Joaquin Oviedo at number 8, who's 23, plays for Perpignan. It was one of my favourite players in the Rugby Championship when Argentina won 3 out of 6 and beat Australia and New Zealand, South Africa for the first time.
Carries
so well, makes great jackals. Just looks. I feel like they have such a good back row production line, don't they? I know,
named after a fabulous Spanish city.
Well, that's true. Actually, that is a great Spanish city.
On the cusp of half time, that was a big moment, wasn't it? Cusp of half time, yeah. Ireland escape, but he was right in the thick of it. Argentina just went to relentless picking and going, which was just really cool and old school, and it really did kind of scramble Ireland's senses a bit, and they got a lot of pay from that.
And Albornoz as well. Looking like
he's
really stepping up, isn't he?
He's been sort of the great sort of Contepomi story in a way, because he never really got a look in during previous regimes, and he started the Rugby Champ on the bench, didn't he? And then he's come in for those wins over Australia and South Africa and in Argentina, and he's looked brilliant. Yeah, I just think if we talk about start of a cycle, teams regenerating and bringing in, I know Albornoz is a bit older, but bringing in new players. Argentina, there's a couple of players there in Oviedo and Albornoz who look really good, and many more to come. Right, that's our roundup section. Let's now get into your many questions as ever. Thank you for sending them in. Okay, so Charlie, we were just quietly going about our business on Thursday, building up to the weekend, talking about the World Rugby election results in Dublin, when quite an interesting story developed. A breakaway league backed by US funding. Charles, tell us more.
Well, it all quite escalated, didn't it? From Thursday morning to now, on Friday we've reported that Finn Russell and Antoine Dupont are being lined up, but basically, long story short, there is a plan in place for a breakaway global league of 8 franchises on a sort of Formula One style travelling circus around the world. New franchises. This will be at club level, and there are lots of agents and executives who have been involved in the early stages of this, who have all signed NDAs, so the details are quite thin on the ground. But they have grand designs. There's a US consortium backing, and they maintain that they do not wish to prevent players from playing international rugby. How that's going to work legally, contractually, and in practice with World Rugby and the various unions remains to be seen. but it's just about watching the space, really. And the mood music is that these guys are big players and they are serious, and it doesn't feel like another World 12s, but we shall see.
Yeah, not to pull back the curtain too much, but everyone signing NDAs makes our job a tiny bit harder, doesn't it, over the last few days? Yes. But we've done our best. The
sort of consistent noise is that this is more serious. Well, A, this is more serious than stuff like the World 12s, and B, that there are enough people that think that the kind of club scene is ripe for disruption with something like this. It's quite funny the way somebody described it to me was a cross between Formula One and IPL with a bit of sevens in, but sort of don't describe it as sevens because sevens is sort of regarded as a bit rubbish now. So don't. So more F1. I
mean, we've not spoken to sort of that many players about it yet, because obviously it only broke on Thursday and Friday. But when the news broke, Joe Marler tweeted basically saying, "Finally," almost as if this has been long overdue in rugby. And now there's a sense that rugby is finally getting its act together. But it is going to change the entire fabric of the ecosystem of the sport.
Just with Marler in particular, that's interesting you mentioned him, because obviously he's part of the Team England group who've been sort of arguing for better kind of deals for senior England players in terms of financial kind of reimbursement from the RFU for their match appearances and stuff like that. That there is a wave, isn't there, of player kind of driven interest in trying to improve how much they're making. Charles, I'll be honest, you sort of lost me at travelling circus. I just can't see how this gets off the ground.
It might end up being a circus.
In terms of the legal aspect of getting all of these players out of contracts and negotiating TV rights deals and everything like that, I just think it's going to take an astonishing... It just feels like it would get bogged down in legal jargon for years.
Oh, it certainly will. But I suppose if you've got enough money, then money always talks. I mean... But they're going to need a lot. They're going to need hundreds of millions of pounds. A source has indicated to us that it might even be as much as 500 million, maybe more. And they must know this. The consortium and the guys leading it must know that amount of cash is going to be required. So if they are serious, then maybe they might have that amount of cash.
And the other thing is that again, consistently we're hearing that this won't get off the ground unless those players will still be able to play Test rugby, because that is the message that they are getting from the players, and I think a lot of the stakeholders. And I would say also that the conversations seem to be going on above players' heads at the minute, largely. So with representatives of players. Watch your spaces is exactly right.
We'll try and have many more developments on this as the days goes on. But yeah, it's very early stages, but obviously fascinating story. Let's get into some of your questions now, starting with Tom. Tom wants to know, is it time to start a different hooker and bring Jamie George on at half time? I think one of us mentioned this quite a lot last week, didn't they, Charles?
Yeah, and I've written about it today as well. I think that at the minute the leadership dynamic in the side is not functioning as well as it could and should. The solution is the hard part, because is Jamie George starting in this team solely for his leadership qualities, i.e. is he still the first choice hooker? If he's in for his leadership, then yes, I think he has to maybe start on the bench and come off, or he has to go 70 minutes. I mean, he suggested on the Rugby Union Weekly podcast after the game on Saturday that he felt fine when he came off at 50 minutes and he had more to give, but that's not necessarily the sort of the thought process from the coaching team, because they'll think actually we need a bit more. We want fresh legs. It's not about how much Jamie George has got left. It's about what Luke Cowan-Dickie can bring. But I mean, is Jamie George the right man to lead England throughout the entire World Cup cycle to the 2027 World Cup? I think it's fair to question that. But then who do you give it to? We discussed this last week, so there's no need to go over it again and again. But is there another outstanding candidate? When Jamie George went off, it looked like it was being run by committee a little bit. And is that the way that it needs to be done? I don't know. The thinking all just seems a little bit muddled, but certainly the trend here is that England are dropping off in the last 20 minutes and their captain is not on the field. That they are the facts. So how they go about addressing that, they need to address it. How they go about doing so, there is one of numerous ways they can go, which we've discussed, but it does need addressing. Do you start Luke County? Do you start Theo Dan and then bring Jamie George on after 45 minutes and say, Jamie, you're playing the last 35 minutes, and when you come on, you will assume the captaincy? I do think it speaks to a more fundamental issue in English rugby, which we touched on last week, that Eddie Jones also mentioned, about there just being a paucity of true leaders. You look at the English captaincy has always been a bit of an issue, really. Courtney Laws stood up, made it his own. Owen Farrell did, but then when there were question marks over whether he was deserving of his place in the starting 15 with Marcus Smith, with George Ford, it became a real big talking point. The last sort of true inspirational leader we had in England and in the Premiership, when you look around, was Martin Johnson, and there hasn't really been anyone like that to sort of, Dylan Hartley obviously had a really good stint at it, but then got dropped. It's always been a little bit of a bête noire in English rugby, and it's continuing to be so.
Yeah. Well, we should talk selection for Japan. Simon asked about that among many of your questions. He also asked, will the enhanced EPS contracts have an effect on who England pick for the Japan game? So England went to great lengths, didn't they, when the elite EPS deals were announced, to say that wouldn't be a factor, that it was just about picking the best matchday squad and that wouldn't play out. I think I'm remembering that correctly. I remember reading this.
I think Theo Dan would be figuring if it was. Right?
Yes, exactly, yeah. And also the fact that, Sam Underhill, who famously didn't get an elite EPS deal, it's very hard to drop him after last week, given how he played. So you would be surprised. Are there any other changes you would like? Personally, I'd quite like to. I feel like this is maybe the Tommy Freeman at 13 game to give it a go, because I just want to see it with one of Slade or Lawrence. I'm not sure which, but
this is the vice they're in, between continuity and hoping it comes good and they build cohesion, versus is it time to stop picking some combinations that are just a bit iffy, and the centres seems to be sort of a big one in that regard. Obviously we mentioned I was at the Stoop watching England A. Fraser Dingwall looked class above at out and out 12 things, so taking the ball to the line and either playing it flat or pulling pullbacks or carrying himself. And I know he's had a couple of goes at it at the beginning of the Six Nations, but that isn't a fair kind of crack at it, I don't think. So I wonder whether, and he was actually, if we rewind back to October, he was name checked by Joel Abd, wasn't he, as a kind of a guy who could potentially be really important. I think he would, if they maintain this aggressive press, I think he'd defend at 13 and he'd attack at 12, and that might be the best way to get more out of Ollie Lawrence. But then do you drop Slade, who's been a cornerstone of it? I'm not sure. Dingwall would be the one. They brought off Ibitoye on 60 England Day, which led a few to sort of go, okay. But I think Manu Feoboso is coming back,
sure,
isn't he, from a HIA? I think they might change the order around with someone like Finn Baxter starting. I think there's another question, isn't there? How can the bench be more bomb squaddy? Someone like Ted Hill at 19. I know that they're curious about him covering lock as well as 6. So.
I mean, Ted Hill and Tom Willis coming off the bench, and I know they're sort of, we're not sure whether those two are fully test class, but I do think, regardless of whether they are test class or not, they are going to be bringing more than Ezekiel Ndombram.
Hill deserves another look, I think, based on his early season form and the flexibility he offers you.
The quandary that England have here is, do they treat this Japan game in isolation, as a sort of, a one-off test against a team who are not as good as the three that they've played before? Or do they have to sort of use what, does what has happened over the past 2 weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks, come into it? Because really, in an ideal world, which is clearly not where we're living, England would have won those 3 games against New Zealand, Australia and South Africa, and then they could have basically had a massive rotation for Japan and probably still won. But if they'd have lost, it could have been a bit of, okay, we've won these 3 games, we tried something a little bit different, we experimented and it didn't quite work, but we need to blood these players.
Yeah.
Now he's in a scenario whereby it's basically must-win territory against Japan, which England will surely still win, but he's in a scenario whereby he won't want to risk anything.
I can see a world where Japan score early and Twickenham gets edgy, and it is really horrible and heavy, the atmosphere. So yeah, you're right. I think they've just got to prioritise a really accurate clinical performance.
But then in sort of the greater good and the long-term thinking and the World Cup, and in an ideal world for English rugby, we're saying that we're lacking depth. This is the sort of game whereby it would be the time to blood new players to get that depth and to say, look, is he good enough? Is he good enough? This guy looks good enough. And all of a sudden, it would be really telling. But the fact that they've lost the 3 before means that in terms of PR and public perception and the crowd and the fans, as you just suggested, Charlie, it's must win on Sunday.
Must win, and probably must win by, I'm going to say 30. Just to give you an idea of what Japan have been up to, they lost 64-19 to New Zealand, lost 52-12 to France, beat Uruguay in the south of France on Saturday 36-20, but our favourite Japan player, Warner Dearns, got sent off. So he's probably not going to play at Twickenham, which is a bit of a bummer. Look out for Dylan Riley, though, at centre. He's really fun to watch. Just a question on Warren Gatland. I'm a Welsh fan, says Alex, who is in the Gatland out camp, but realistically, who would be in the frame to replace him? I think this is actually a really interesting question, because you can debate about whether Gatland should stay or go and the pros and cons, but actually trying to work out who would come in is interesting. So I was chatting with some Welsh journalists about this after we left the ground last night, and one of them mentioned Michael Checker. Now, I don't know if Checker would want to do this and go back into Test Rugby with Wales, but he's an easy target because he's on a 1+1 deal at Leicester. So the payout isn't going to be enormous because you can probably get him out of that deal quite quickly. Are there any other names that sort of spring to mind who you think might be good fits?
I mean, in an ideal world, on a sort of wish list, Checker would obviously be very high because he's a really well regarded coach and he's in the UK. I don't know if they've got. I don't know if he wants to do it, and I don't know if he would leave Leicester to go to a different job in the Northern Hemisphere, given that his family are in Australia. That remains to be seen. Obviously, we've got the full Leicester contract negotiation stuff to come as well, because we're not sure about what he's going to be doing next year. He would be, of course, he'd be an outstanding candidate, as would Neil McDonald, and there are other coaches. But as I stressed earlier, would anybody actually want to do this job? I mean, Rob Howley, would they bring him back? I mean, he's involved obviously with Gatland, has a lot of history. Would they just give him the reins? I mean, I don't know.
Dave Rennie's another one.
Dave Rennie,
has done it at test level and was kind of developing the Wallabies in quite a promising way before Eddie Jones came in. But no, that's what our sort of uneasy sort of silence is
Wayne
kind of speaking
Well, I think part of the problem is there isn't an outstanding candidate in Wales. I was sort of chatting about this with Welsh journalists yesterday, about who would be the candidate, involved with the Welsh regions in the URC, who you would be like, okay, this is the person to turn to. A bit like when Pivac was at the Scarlets and they were going great guns, and it was like, oh, can turn to Pivac. There isn't really anyone. They actually suggested Toby Booth would be the best.
I mean, I was just about to say,
who's about to leave the Ospreys.
Who is actually available? As in, who could they get in now for free and not have to pay out? Toby Booth, Graham Rowntree, he's coaching in Japan. So
Leon McDonald, is he?
Leon
free post
McDonald, potentially, unless he's been snapped up. That, in terms of like,
is that Felix Jones' entrance music?
Felix Jones, he's not available.
He's
doing research from home.
Not available.
He's doing research from home.
Basically,
analysis and research from home.
It's very hard to work out who it's going to be. And just finally, not a question as such, but the World Rugby Player of the Year nominees have been announced this morning. So for the men's player, you've got 3 South Africans: Eben Etzebeth, Pieter-Steph, Cheslin Colby, and Ireland's Caelan Doris. And for the women's player, I did have it right in front of me, but I'm just going to get it back up. You've got Pauline Bourdon-Sansu from France, Ellie Kildern and Alex Matthews from England, and Alex Tesler from Canada. In terms of the men's player, I mean, probably a good thing that there's 3 Saffers on there, because otherwise the Saffers would have been up in arms about a lack of South African representation. They'd probably argue it should have been 4 nominees, really.
It doesn't sound like that.
But of those 3... probably Etzebeth, I would say. Any major counter arguments there?
Doris been very good, hasn't he? But no, Etzebeth for me.
Pieter-Steph's already won it. He doesn't need to win it again, so that's fine. When will a prop get nominated? That's the What
Really?
I don't know.
They've never had a
I
proper
don't
nomination?
think
How
so.
has that not happened when the scrum has been like so fun? It's just rubbish. It's so bad.
You're preaching to the choir. I don't know. I don't think a prop's ever been nominated. But if
I
Ox
can
had
imagine
been in
that
there,
prop
I
hasn't been
wouldn't have
won,
said
hasn't
no.
won, but never been nominated.
I think so.
Crikey.
We'll double check on that. Readers, listeners, if that's wrong, I'll correct myself next week. But yeah, I think we're all in agreement that Ebenezer will win that. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Charles. That was a massive week to try and recap, but hopefully we've covered everything possible. Where are you going to be on the weekend, Charles?
I'm at Murrayfield, Scotland, Australia. Really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a cracker.
Charlie, where are you going to be?
Twickenham Sunday, live blocking Wales, South Africa on Saturday, I think.
Yes, which is where I will be on Saturday. Oh, man.
Sneering again. Started and finished with a sneer.
What is? Didn't one of you text me what the record Wales South Africa?
90 something. Something horrible.
Oh, it's not going to be that bad.
Razzie Erasmus was asked about the next week after the game, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he said, look, it's always a hard game against Wales. And then he sort of went, apart from that last time we played them in the World Cup, when they scored 50 hops, didn't
when
they?
we scored 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there for that. So yeah, best of luck to Wales and all the teams playing next weekend. Loads to come this week on the website previewing that Japan game. We'll have our predictions and also our selections as well. So keep up with all of that and all of our columns. And also the latest on Warren Gatland's future as well as that plays out. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Go.compare sponsors the Telegraph Rugby Podcast. At Go.compare, we are pleased to be partnering with the Telegraph Media Group to launch the Making a Difference campaign, recognising the individuals who are going the extra mile at grassroots rugby clubs across Great Britain. Go to telegraph.co.uk/making a difference to nominate a grassroots hero who could win £5,000 for their club, as well as hints and tips from our insurance experts at Go.compare.